As we always say, sometimes the most important picks in a fantasy draft are the players you don't take. Here's some running backs you just need to avoid this season.
If you can't wait to start drafting fantasy football teams, you don't have to. Underdog Fantasy has drafts with entry fees as low as $4 and prize pools up to $15 million. And of course, their flagship Best Ball Mania 5, where someone will win over $1 million. Plus, if you sign up and use promo code ENDGAME, you'll get a special pick that you can use to potentially win 325 times your entry. And you're going to get up to $250 in bonus cash. Don't wait. Go join Underdog Fantasy now and use promo code ENDGAME to get your special pick and cash.
Let's start with a couple of veterans, both on new teams. Chris, go first.
I'm avoiding Aaron Jones this year. And look, I know people are going to say, oh, he was pretty good last year. And he was, you're right, for the 11 games that he actually played. I shouldn't even say for the 11 games. I should say for like the maybe 6 or 7 games when he was actually fully healthy that he played. He was pretty good. He still showed some juice. It wasn't like he was complete dust or anything last year. But I don't like the situation he's going into this year with Minnesota. First of all, you look at it the 2 years since they hired Kevin O'Connell. 2 years ago, they were 30th in rush attempts per game. Last year, 28th in rush attempts per game. And maybe you're going to say, yeah, but no Kirk Cousins. Maybe they're going to run the ball more. Well, how many games did they have Kirk Cousins for last year? Even without Kirk Cousins, they were still one of the pass-heaviest offenses. It's just what Kevin O'Connell wants to do. He wants to throw the football. Now, sure, Aaron Jones is a capable pass-catching running back. I get that. I don't think Aaron Jones is going to be just a complete outright bust, but you still got to draft this guy inside the top 20 running backs, right around running back 19, and I don't think he's going to be that good. I think he's just going to be one of those guys that you never really feel great about having in your lineup. Like if you have to play him, it's okay, but you don't love it. That's not really the guy I want to draft, especially when there are so many running backs later in the draft this year that I think A, will be workhorses, and B, will actually have more upside than Aaron Jones. Not to mention, I talked about it, he only played 11 games last year. He's going to turn 30 years old this year. He's been around. He's got a decent amount of wear and tear. This is definitely a concern here. You got to factor this in. Like, sure, maybe he stays healthy all year, but 30-year-old running back with a lot of wear and tear, maybe he doesn't. So I just think there are a lot of red flags here for Aaron Jones. Again, I don't think Aaron Jones is going to be like a complete bust, like totally unusable in fantasy, but I think he's going to be one of those guys you're going to draft him, and you're not even going to remember by the end of the season that you drafted him because he's going to really do nothing of significance for your fantasy team. And like I said, I just think there are better running backs later on in the draft that you can get that have more upside. So I just find myself over and over again just passing on Aaron Jones.
That's exactly how I feel about Joe Mixon. This is a player we all know, right? For years, he's been really pretty reliable for fantasy. And there are times, like the last couple of years, and we kind of try to count him out. And still he stands as a productive running back. You know, you don't feel like he was disappointing based on where he was drafted. And not a lot of people are more excited about him because leaving the Bengals wouldn't be good, except he's going to the Houston Texans, one of the more exciting offenses now in the league with CJ Stroud at quarterback. But here's the problem. It's a different offense, and not just different, but also maybe not better for Mixon personally. Now, one of the reasons why I haven't been excited about Mixon for a couple of years now is because he just really hasn't been great as a runner. He's got a career 4.1 yard per carry average, just kind of okay as a runner, but he gets by on volume because he's been the bell cow for the Bengals, and a lot of it also is because of his PPR value through receptions. Last couple of years, over 110 receptions combined, and so that matters, right? And of course, the goal line, it's Mixon. Everywhere, it's all Mixon. Now, you might say, well, who's going to threaten him in Houston? Dameon Pierce didn't do that last year. He lost his job to Devin Singletary. It's not about who I think might get work instead of Mixon. I just think he's going to be used a different way. So here's one thing, with this offense in Houston, CJ Stroud in particular, he doesn't check the ball down. He just does. He's always looking downfield. That's why we saw so many big plays. That's why we saw the receivers always have big games. The running backs are used like running backs, but out of all qualified quarterbacks last year, CJ Stroud was 32nd out of 33 in terms of running back target rate. He does not want to check the ball down. He wants to look downfield. All right. So we might see fewer dump offs to mix in. Also, the fact that, now he's about to turn 28. He still seems to be fine physically, but, he's already just kind of been average as a runner. Maybe he loses another half of a step or something. I just don't know, the efficiency isn't there. And if the volume takes a slight dip in terms of his PPR value, I just feel like you're going to be disappointed. Some people are drafting him higher because he's a Texan. I'm dropping him lower, and that means I'm just not drafting him at all. Now, Vet, on the same team, some people think maybe he's going overlooked, but you feel like he's going to be overrated.
Yeah, and I know this one is going to get some comments. I know there's going to be people out there because every time I talk about Jahmyr Gibbs, I always get the comments like, how can you take Jahmyr Gibbs when David Montgomery is still there? And it makes me question if people really realize what happened last year in Detroit. Because sure, when you look at David Montgomery to start the season, this guy was a house of fire, right? He was great. When you look at last year prior to week 6 where he got hurt in that week 6 game, he played over 70% of the snaps in all but one of the Detroit Lions games. But then you look at the rest of the season, including the NFL playoffs, he only went over 50% of the snaps 4 times all year. And again, when you look at those early games, he had games of 21 carries, 16 carries, 32 carries, 19 carries. He only went over 15 carries the rest of the season 5 times, and his highest amount was 18 over the rest of the season. He was not used the same way once they started to get confidence in Jahmyr Gibbs. Now we got Jahmyr Gibbs going into year 2. They're just going to have even more confidence in this guy. And even if you say, well, hey, look, this guy's got a chance to score a touchdown every single week. Sure, you're right. I can't argue with that. But look at his game logs from week 12 on in the games where he scored a touchdown. Week 12, a touchdown. 15 PPR points. Okay, that's fine. Week 13, a touchdown, 12. Week 16, a touchdown, 14 points. Week 17, a touchdown, 12. Week 18, a touchdown, 10. Week 19, a touchdown, 13. So even when he's getting you a touchdown, he's really not having a big ceiling. He's just kind of like, oh, he scored, thank goodness. He's one of these running backs who needs to score touchdowns. He had 16 catches last year. That's basically 1 catch a game. That's it. You're not getting anything in the receiving game, especially with Jahmyr Gibbs there. I think people are still looking at David Montgomery like the guy they saw early in the season when he was dominating the touches, dominating the goal line, dominating the red zone, but that is not what happened as the season went on, and they're going to trust Jahmyr Gibbs even more going into this year. David Montgomery is one of those running backs that has to score a touchdown for you to even feel good about him being in your fantasy lineup. And without 2 touchdowns, he has almost no ceiling. So for me, David Montgomery, again, just one of these running backs I'm just not going to draft. I don't want a guy that has to score a touchdown just so I can feel good about him in my lineup. I want a guy who, when he scores a touchdown, I feel great about him in my lineup. That is not David Montgomery this year.
Well, another running back who people might assume is in a better situation this year is DeAndre Swift. Look, I know he's going to a lesser team. Obviously, the Chicago Bears had the top pick for a reason. This Philadelphia Eagles is a great offense, but you say, well, he was vultured so much at the goal line by Jalen Hurts, and now he gets to be the guy. Now they signed him to this 3-year deal. We're going to see more DeAndre Swift. And that's wrong, because I'll tell you what he's walking into. People don't realize this might actually be a timeshare or a full-blown committee. Why? Because it's simple. The coaching philosophy. That's what matters. Look, Swift finally had his best year. I guess we can call it a breakout last year. Finally hit 1,000 yards on the ground, his best fantasy season, because he was actually used like an RB1. And sure, he could have had more opportunities. The Eagles tend to abandon the run at times. Of course, Jalen Hurts running the ball, other factors involved. So Swift going to Chicago, sure, he'll be the RB1. I don't dispute that. But we can't just, close our eyes and pretend he's the only guy touching the ball there because they signed him. Because what we've seen here is that Matt Eberflus has preferred to use a hot hand approach. That's exactly what he did last year. And just because Swift is there doesn't mean all of a sudden he's going to change his mind and say, oh yeah, this guy, he's been a bell cow, all his career. Let's just give it to him exclusively. So DeAndre Swift has never been that kind of runner, right? And I don't think it's going to change because Eberflus has said this himself in very specific words. Something basically alluding to the fact that it's going to be a, kind of situational thing. We'll see who's running well, and this is just how he rolls. So even though there's a new offensive coordinator in town, it doesn't matter. Eberflus is the one who's dictating the way things go here. And we're going to see some Rashawn Johnson. If Khalil Herbert's still around, we're going to see him too. I don't think it's going to be much different from last year. I hate to say it. I think DeAndre Swift, although he will have some value, I don't think it's going to live up to last year's standards. And I don't think he's worth drafting where he's being taken inside the top 100.
Do you want to win your fantasy league but don't have time to do all the research? Are you tired of drafting mediocre teams and then having to constantly hope you hit it big on the waiver wire just to compete? Do you wish you could have a fantasy expert like Pierre or myself with you while you draft? Well, now you can. With our app Draft Lane and our live draft pilot, we will guide you through every pick of your draft and tell you exactly which players we would pick if we were on the clock. Our proprietary algorithm will take into account your league settings, scoring, and roster requirements to identify the best picks every time you are on the clock to ensure you have a winning team from week one. It's the closest thing you can get to having us there drafting with you. Get the biggest edge in fantasy football. Just go to your app store and search for Draft Lane and download it today and get ready to dominate your draft.
All right, then some names who brought us fantasy glory, but it was quite a while ago.
Yeah, well, look, hey, Ezekiel Elliott brought you fantasy glory last year in the fantasy playoffs if you happen to pick him up off the waiver wire, so I'll give him credit for that. But like everybody all excited about Zeke back in Dallas. I don't understand why. And I've been talking about it recently. At first I didn't really think much of the Dallas backfield. Like they didn't do anything in free agency, which was shocking. Then they didn't do anything in the NFL draft, which was probably even more shocking. And then I just kind of like didn't think about the Dallas backfield. But lately I have been thinking about it. And it would be very surprising to me if Rico Dowdle is not the number one running back to start the season. Ezekiel Elliott has been so bad. He wasn't just so bad last year. He was bad the year before when he was still in Dallas. Look at him 2 years ago in Dallas. 62nd in true yards per carry, 55th in yards per touch, 48th in juke rate, 36th in evaded tackles, 41st in breakaway run rate. And then it somehow got worse last year. 60th in true yards per carry, 51st in yards per touch, 42nd in juke rate, 31st in evaded tackles. And I said it if you watched our league winning video. Ezekiel Elliott literally had one breakaway run. One time last year, he was able to go over 15 yards on a run. This guy has no juice left. He's complete dust. And I think the Cowboys have forgotten this. It's like, distance makes the heart grow fonder. Like Zeke was gone for a year. He was off in the East Coast up there in New England. And they're like, hey, I remember Zeke. He was pretty good. Let's bring him back. But then they're going to see this guy on the field in training camp, in practice and realize, wow, this guy has nothing left. He has no juice left. And Rico Dowdle was pretty good last year. I'm not going to sit here and tell you Rico Dowdle is a special talent or this incredible running back, but he's significantly better than Ezekiel Elliott at this point of their careers. Dallas is a team that's contending. Dallas is a team that wants to win a Super Bowl. They're not going to be able to let Zeke go out there and get 20 plus carries for, 35 yards and just kill them snap after snap. Rico Dowdle, I think, is going to be the RB1 here. All you were hoping for if you draft Ezekiel Elliott this year is that he's the goal line back and that he gets enough chances to at least get 7, 8 touchdowns so he's not a complete bust. That is not what I want to bank on my fantasy running backs, especially again this year when there's so many good late round running backs. I can easily pass on Ezekiel Elliott in every single one of my drafts.
Well, unfortunately, it's time for me to say, when I see the name Najee Harris on draft day, I'm just going to pass and look down elsewhere because I think what he is what he's going to be. If anything, we've seen the best he's going to have. I don't think we're going to see better days. And of course, it could always get worse. Now, the very easy reason for this is I could just throw out the name Arthur Smith and be done with it. All right, we know what's going to be in store for this offense. But let's get back to that. Let me also point out something that should be alarming to Najee Harris truthers, if there are any left. Since Jaylen Warren has come on, that has carved out a role in the passing game for himself. But Najee Harris has taken a big fall. He used to be the everything back there for the Steelers. Each year, his receptions have gone down quite a bit, from 74 down to 41, down to 29 last year. All right, so that obviously dings him in PPR leagues and half PPR leagues quite a bit. And then there's just the fact that, honestly, as a rusher, he's fine, but nothing special. I mean, I hate to say it, but this is what the kids say is mid, right? The definition of mid for fantasy. He's rushing for just over 1,000 yards, 7 or 8 touchdowns every year. It's fine, but is this the type of player that wins you a league? It isn't. Like, you always feel like you're underwhelmed, hoping for more, and once in a while have a semi-big game, but never do you point to Najee Harris and say, thanks, buddy, you helped me take that one home. It's just, I'd rather go for more upside, a little farther down. I mean, look for a young player who's got some juice, somebody who's in a better situation. And then, of course, not have to deal with the fact I'm pulling my hair out when I see that the Steelers are on the 2-yard line and they're handing the ball off to Cordero Patterson or throwing it to the third string tight end, not Najee Harris. So there you go, Najee Harris. It was, I guess, fun while it lasted, but I'm not drafting you anymore. Those are some running backs we're just avoiding altogether. Forget value. I don't want those guys on my team, and neither does Chris. But if you do want some good values, we've got plenty right here. Check out this video.